Hello and welcome to Health 247 on Rapid Television, your trusted source for reliable health information and discussions on issues that affect our everyday lives. On today's edition, we focus on female genital mutilation, FGM, a harmful traditional practice that continues to have devastating physical, emotional, and psychological consequences for millions of women and girls. Will we explore its impact, dispel common misconceptions, and discuss why collective action is essential to end the practice? I am Josephine Bitrus. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back. Female genital mutilation, also known as FGM, remains one of the most harmful traditional practices affecting women and girls across the world. Despite decades of advocacy and legal prohibitions, millions of girls continue to face the risks of being subjected to the practice every year. In Nigeria, nearly 20 million women and girls are estimated to have undergone FGM, making the country one of the highest burden nations globally. Health experts and child protection advocates are now intensifying calls for stronger enforcement of laws, community engagement, and public education to eliminate the practice once and for all. Female genital mutilation is the partial or total removal of the external female genitalia for non-medical reasons. It is internationally recognized as a violation of the human rights of women and girls and has no health benefits. Across many Nigerian communities, the practice continues due to deeply rooted cultural beliefs, misconceptions about purity and marriageability, and pressure to conform to tradition. According to the latest estimates by United Nations Children's Fund, Nigeria accounts for almost 20 million FGM survivors, representing about 10% of the global burden. Although national prevalence has declined over the years, progress remains too slow to achieve the global goal of ending FGM by 2030. Female genital mutilation (FGM) is a widespread global problem affecting more than 230 million women and girls across over 30 countries, with an estimated 4 million girls at risk each year.
Globally, over 200 million women in over 29 countries to 30 countries are living with the consequences of female genital mutilation. 10% of that 200 million is 20 million. So that 20 million are the people, the women living with consequences of female genital mutilation here in Nigeria. So we have 20 million women are living with the consequences of female genital mutilation in Nigeria.
Infants are particularly vulnerable because parents or caregivers often make the decision on their behalf, believing the practice is a cultural obligation or a way to secure future social acceptance. Female genital mutilation (FGM) persists despite growing awareness and legal bans because it is deeply rooted in cultural traditions, social norms, and misconceptions about femininity, purity, and marriageability. In many communities, families continue the practice due to fear of social exclusion, pressure to conform, and mistaken beliefs that it is supported by religion or necessary to preserve family honor, even though no major religion requires it.
FGM is a cultural issue. And because it's not just a cultural issue, it has so many, how do I say this? It has so many deep roots source. And because the source is sometimes from religion, sometimes from culture and all of that, that's the reason why a lot of people, despite lots of education, I'm not proud to say this, but I say this sometimes. There was a time that Ekiti State had the second highest case of cases, prevalence of female genital mutilation in Nigeria. I'm from Ekiti State, and that brought a huge scare for me. So, because you will look and say the percentage of people, the percentage of educated people, when you want to count professors, you go to states like Ekiti State, and then you wonder what's happening. Why do they still have these cases? And that's because it's rooted in culture. Some people believe that once the head of the baby touches the clitoris, then the baby will die. Some people believe, that economical reasons. So there are different reasons. There are cultural reasons, there are psychosocial reasons, there are economical reasons, there are cultural reasons, there are religious reasons, right? And some religious reasons, people say, oh, it's not a Christian thing and it's not a Muslim thing, but there are doctrines that are in some of these things. And due to those doctrines that people have carved out for themselves, that's when they now started. Okay, so let me just use this as an example to make my point clearer. I met someone, I just sat by a woman and we were having a conversation, and she said, oh, what do you do? I said, oh, I work to end harmful traditional practice, because I don't just advocate to end FGM alone, other harmful traditional practice like breast ironing and all the rest. And when we were having that conversation, she said, oh, you were not caught. And I was like, oh, no, I wasn't caught. And then she wondered, she said it's biblical because her father is a pastor. And I told her it's not biblical. It was just a cultural thing. And it was just a religious doctrine that was carved out by some people. And I showed her what Moses actually meant when he was talking about circumcision. He was talking about engrafting, bringing you from darkness into light, right? From you being in an unbelieving state into becoming a believer. So that was basically what Moses was doing. And I, explained that to her. She was like, oh, so that was when she now even understood that, oh, this was why I was going through some of the consequences of female genital mutilation that I was going through. So there are deep-rooted issues in culture, and religion and a whole lot of things. And I think that that's the reason why a lot of people are not still, you still hear cases of people coming from, different countries, to come and, get caught here. They are probably Nigerians and they've gone, some other countries, and even some African countries are still doing this. So there are deep-rooted issues that, we need to place the spotlight on.
Female genital mutilation has serious immediate and long-term health consequences.
Some people do it maybe 8 days after birth and all of that. And I think that the reasons why they do it at those points is just the same way they say they want to pierce a baby's ears. They'll say they pierce it when it will not be so painful and all of that. So I think that that's one of the reasons why they do it, from 0 to maybe 1. Some people do it even afterwards, depending on the culture. You hear some people in probably Imo states and some other states, they'll tell you they do it, more than that. Some people 5, some people 7, some people before 13 rather. So they do it. So some people just do it based on their culture. It's still rooted in. The thing about FGM is some people do not even know why they do some part of the practice of female genital mutilation. They just do it because they're carrying on a generational information, from their forefathers to them. And, they're just moving it forward and forward and forward. So basically they do it based on their culture. They say, oh, in our culture, we do it 0 to 1. Some other people in their own culture, they do it 13, 5, depending on their culture.
Female genital mutilation can have lifelong psychological and sexual consequences. Many survivors experience anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, and post-traumatic stress due to the trauma of the procedure.
Female genital mutilation is a total or partial cut of a female's external genitalia. For those people that do not understand, when we say FGM, And female genital mutilation is not, people call it female circumcision, but it's not circumcision because it's a gruesome violation of a girl's rights. Right? So there's a difference. When we say male circumcision, we say it's okay, to cut a boy, right? And that's because it reduces penile cancer. It does a lot of things to help the boy child, but it doesn't do any, FGM does not have any health benefit, right? So the immediate consequence of female genital mutilation is at that point that they are cutting that particular girl. A lot of girls go into shock at that particular point. There's injury to the genitalia at that particular point. A lot of things happen. Bleeding, some people even go into shock and they die, immediately. There's retention of urine too at that particular point. Those are the immediate consequences, basically, that I can think of for now. And even bleeding occurs, and maybe from there, death. So yeah, then the long-term consequence, so afterwards that it has been done, maybe for some days after, or, even months and years, lifelong consequence. Some people are still living with the consequence up till now. There was a girl that was caught. Her father is a goat rearer. She was caught, and then, how you have a wound and you feel the need to want to peel it out. And that was how this girl peeled off that particular wound, at her genitalia, and that was how she bled to death. So that is also part of the long-term consequence. It's also part of the immediate, if you're looking at it based on the days. Other ones, we have painful sexual intercourse. We have still urine retention for some people, infection in the utera, complications in childbirth. We've seen this. This one is happening over and over. I met a woman that for her 4 children, she gave birth to them via CS because of female genital mutilation. I met a woman as well that went through a series of miscarriages due to female genital mutilation. I've seen cases of divorce. Somebody met me one time. I went for a program and she was like, "Oh, you used to talk about FGM." I said, "Yes." She said, "Okay, that there's an issue in her community." And I said, "What is it?" She said, "There's a girl that was caught. She's married, and now the husband is having, other relationships outside. And that was a problem for her." The problem was not just him having that relationship outside, but because she's unable to satisfy him, as she's supposed to. And she wanted an advice from me. And then I told her that, it's important that she see a therapist, because there are some things that have been done and probably cannot be undone, but there are things that she can do, to help her, seek medical help, so those things you can do them, to help you. There are also psychological issues, in some of these cases. You see somebody living with low self-esteem. You see people, having post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, due to some of these issues. So imagine the girl that had her marriage intact, and because of everything that had happened to her, she had to leave her marriage, because of this particular issue. So it's something that can also cause the psychological issue, especially in a country like Nigeria, where we still have people that, stereotype other people, right?
Traditional rulers, religious leaders, and community gatekeepers play a crucial role in eliminating female genital mutilation by using their influence to challenge harmful cultural norms, correct misconceptions that FGM is a religious requirement, and encourage communities to abandon the practice.
We have cutting seasons, Christmas period, this long vacation coming, Easter period, vacations in schools. Those are cutting seasons, so that the girls can stay at home, heal for some time, and then go back. There's some girls that do not heal within the time frame, and because they don't heal within that time frame, they miss school, and because of that they have to repeat some classes. So that sometimes cause low self-esteem and some things for them. And for the divorce case, I spoke about how a woman leaves her marriage and that affects her psychologically. There are other psychological issues. The fact that you are unable to meet your spouse sexually, those are, issues that a lot of women are going through, these days. And when the husband goes out to satisfy themselves, those women know, and they live with that, pain in their heart. So that causes depression, so those are psychological issues that goes on. There are other ones that I can't probably remember right now. Sexual issues. So one of the myths around female genital mutilation is the fact that once a girl clitoris is cut off, that stops her from having the urge for sexual intercourse. But looking at it over time, we can see that it's even one of the causes of sexual workers right now. Some people are looking for satisfaction, and because they are not getting the satisfaction because of the fact that an organ is cut out from their body, they now look for other sexual, satisfaction outside. And then you get to see that sexual workers are on the rise, and we're wondering, oh, you think it's just poverty that's leading people into, or is the cause of, that, but there are other things, that are causing it behind the scenes. So yeah, that's part of the sexual issues. And the one that I mentioned earlier, where women feel as if the number one for the woman, she's not even getting the satisfaction that she needs, not even to satisfy the man alone, but the one that she needs as a human being, she's not getting that. And then she's unable to also satisfy her husband. So at that particular point, she's just trying her best, right, to meet up at every point in time. So that's not fair on her. So basically, that's the psychological and sexual issues.
Nigeria has made progress in reducing the prevalence of female genital mutilation through stronger laws, awareness campaigns, and community engagement. But the pace of change is still too slow to meet the global target of eliminating FGM by 2030.
So I think that the number one role is education. When people are aware about a particular thing, they understand what it is. Even when they insist that they want to go into it, they now understand that this particular thing, we've heard that it will cause harm. But at the end of the day, if you go into it, then you are at your own, it's going to be at your own cost, right? I was on an interview one time. I think I was with somebody and we're having a conversation. And she said, it's my choice. I can do what I want to do with my body. And I'm like, even with the education, then that's fine. If you want to do whatever you want to do with your body. But remember, there are laws that are guiding female genital mutilation in this country. And once you're caught, you'll be held accountable. So yeah, basically, those, I think, for leaders, I think for even religious leaders, that's one of the conversations that most of us do not like to have. Women, you do go for meetings, you have gatherings, you do contribution, you sew wrapper, but there are a lot of women that are dying in silence among you. So is there a way you can have some of these conversations in your meetings? Some people have some religious, cultural meetings on Sundays and something like that. Can you sit down and have some of those conversations in your cultural meetings? In the church, can we have women organizing meetings and not just excluding the men, right? But having the men also sit down. Let's have these conversations together. The reason why I'm saying let's not exclude the men is a story that I heard. There was a woman that refused to be caught because in her own place, they taught them, they understood it. But she got married to someone that, had to be caught. She kept on, talking about it. No, in my place, we don't get caught. She kept on talking about it. The parents insisted, the parents of the guy insisted that she should be caught, and she refused. So after some time, she got pregnant and she was supposed to give birth. When it was time for her to give birth, immediately the women that were coming to help her to give birth, came and they opened her leg and they saw her clitoris. They all washed their hands and said, "Oh, abomination." And they refused to deliver of her baby. And she cried and insisted and all of that. And, they refused. And then the husband came and said, "Why would she refuse? In fact, you should cut her." So that when they came and they insisted that they were going to cut her, she tried to push the baby out so that at least they will collect the baby from her, before cutting her. But those women pushed the baby back inside her and then, was trying to cut her. At the end of the day, the baby died, but the woman survived. She went into shock at that time and she fainted. They insisted that they would cut her, so they cut her even while she was in shock. And then they brought out the dead baby. So we can see that if we don't have men as allies in religious gatherings, in community gatherings, as gatekeepers, then we'll have some of these issues still living in our midst. And the people that are perpetrating, or the victims, or the survivors, as we may say, are the people that are living with the hurt.
Parents must understand that culture should protect and uplift children, not expose them to lifelong harm. Female genital mutilation has no medical benefit and can cause serious physical and emotional consequences.
So I would say that yes, we are working. We are working. Like I said, it's a cultural issue. So it's not just an advocacy like stop rape, right? It's an advocacy to change the entire mentality. I know even rape, it's also an advocacy like that, but to change the entire mentality of not just the person, but a generational mentality that is in the heart of that person. So it's I would not say it's difficult, because it's something that can be done. There's so much possibility in it. But a lot of us are working. A lot of people are working. We have organizations like the Global Media Campaign to End FGM, UNFPA, my organization, Good Tides Philippine Missions Foundation. We're creating awareness. During the International Day for Zero Tolerance for Female Genital Mutilation, that's on February 6th, I do lots of campaigns, go to communities, do lots of media campaigns, not just TV campaigns, but radio, and as we go to the grassroots as we can, to create this awareness. And we're trying our best. And I think that with the policies and with the fact that, there are policies, the problem that we have is implementation. Because when we have people who are caught, with some of these acts, who are they reporting to? And the people they are reporting to, how are they taking the issues? Are they sending those people to court, or are they saying, oh, you, sorry, and everybody goes their way, right? Are they sent to proper channels where they can be punished? Because I believe that if one perpetrator is punished and they make him make a public show of that particular perpetrator, then people learn and they're like, okay, no, I would not, go with this particular act. So I feel that once we begin to implement, the implementation is not just only for the government, it's also for individuals. You're living in a community where that is happening. What are you doing as an individual, to end female genital mutilation? You cannot just leave it for the NGOs alone, right? It's just like what RapidTV is doing, today. You're calling an expert to create an awareness on this particular thing so that people can understand it and they can end it. So I think that we're moving. It's not as bad as it used to be, but we're creating the awareness. And one other thing that I've done is I'm an author. I wrote a book, Tolani Nirara. It means Tolani said no. I went around to do book distribution, or sponsored, to do book distribution for children, because there was a time, there was a girl that was supposed to be caught and she knew, she was aware, and she ran, right? So can we create awareness to teenagers as well, to be teenagers as well, so that they can understand that you have a choice to make. You can also create this awareness. You can speak against it. And, that has really helped lots of girls, not just to end, not just to stop female genital mutilation on their level, but to talk to people about, other issues like rape, and to also tell them that, I have bodily autonomy and I know what it means.
The single most impactful action in eradicating female genital mutilation in Nigeria would be the full and consistent enforcement of existing anti-FMG laws, combined with community-level education and accountability mechanisms. When perpetrators are reliably prosecuted and communities clearly understand the legal consequences, it creates a strong deterrent effect, while sustained awareness campaigns help shift the cultural beliefs that keep the practice alive.
So to every parent, it's important that you understand what female genital mutilation is. What your forefathers told you, what your fathers told you about is a myth. I'm sorry to tell you, to break your heart. It's a myth. It's time to stop female genital mutilation. It doesn't have any health benefits. It does not do any good to the girl. In fact, it even throws her, that thing that you're trying to avoid, it's more like you're trying to push her more into it by cutting her. There are ways to educate a girl to not to be promiscuous, right? There are ways to talk to a girl, right? Call her, sit her down. If you want me to come and talk to your girl, I can do that for you, right? Call her, sit her down, and educate her on the importance of being pure, right? On living without, having sexual intercourse, right? It's important you have that conversation with your girl child. So having that conversation would help instead of cutting that girl. So that's the fact that you're thinking female genital mutilation will help. It would not do any help. FGM does more harm. In fact, it does all the harm than good. Integrating female genital mutilation into sexual and reproductive health and rights conversations, spotlighting it, right? The way we talk about rape, the way we talk about domestic abuse, can we also talk about female genital mutilation like that? Sometimes when you're talking about female genital mutilation, people say, hey, you're talking about the genitalias. We don't want to hear about it. We don't want to have those conversations, right? Can we mainstream the talk on female genital mutilation into these conversations on sexual and reproductive health and rights? I feel that when we do that, that helps us. That puts light on female genital mutilation. That makes everybody understand it. When you go to police station, somebody's talking about female genital mutilation, the person at the gender desk understands it, understands the laws that are guiding it, understands the Maputo Protocol, understands the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, understands the Child Rights Act, right? And is able to implement some of those issues, yeah.
Ending female genital mutilation requires collective action from families and communities to policymakers and law enforcement agencies. As Nigeria joins the global movement to eliminate the practice, stakeholders say protecting girls' rights, health, and dignity must remain a national priority. Thank you for watching Health 247 on Rapid Television. Tune in next week for more. Until then, eat well, stay healthy, and take care. I am Josephine Bitrus.